Yeah. Not here? Yeah. Shift F5. Huh. We good?
All right then, let's welcome
All
Pat
right.
up on stage.
Yeah, apologies to the camera person. I tend to get excited and jiggle around. I'll try not to go out of frame. Hello, everybody. This is me a couple of days ago. Let's see if I can do this. Oh, turn this on. Yeah. Come on, clicker. Fancy, and I bring my own clicker, but it doesn't click.
You just have to walk more.
Oh, maybe, yeah, it's coming. Maybe this needs to be selected. All right, this is me a couple of days ago playing with Diego's awesome missile commander, and then, oh, this shouldn't be happening. Oh no, and then the second thing, oh, 2 bugs. The point is I was playing with this, and let's see, clicker, come on, click, man, fuck it. Sorry. Simulation only gets you so far. So you can throw a zillion test vectors at something, or put informal if you're feeling fancy and can actually get it right. But none of that actually tells you about the user experience, tells you what it feels like when a human presses a button, or when some sensor asynchronously starts, spewing gibberish at you, or when that, off by 1 bug that slipped through, meets the real world. So what I'm going to show today actually covers that gap. So what if you could actually take your design, whether it's for an FPGA or you're targeting an ASIC, and try it out in the real world? Same interfaces, same everything, and just put it there and see it interacting with the actual hardware and the actual people and systems that are going to be interacting with it in real life. Now, testing with an FPGA is not exactly new, but there are a few things that make this approach special and interesting, especially if you're targeting, FPGAs, yes, but ASICs, TinyTapeout ASICs in particular. Let's see. So this thing slots right into the TinyTapeout demo board. You can pop it out, put in an ASIC, pop it out, and then it just runs exactly the same way. So the same commands, the same APIs, one thing, and you're loaded the bitstream, and there you are in real life. It's a one-to-one mapping to the ASIC breakouts that go on the demo board, so it's the same pinout, but it's also the same interface in terms of the APIs and the way you interact with it. So that means same pinout, it means same external modules, it means same test benches. So how do you use it? 3 steps. You basically harden it, either locally or through GitHub, get that bin file, stick it onto the file system in bitstreams, and then 1 command, you're live. So like I said, you can do it tool-free through GitHub Actions. We have actions to do everything, and it just generates that thing. And then once it's done, you download the zip, get the bin, stick it on there into the bitstreams directory, and whatever's there is going to be available. If you want to do it locally, you just get the TT support tools. It's still 1 command, TT FPGA harden, it just does everything. And then once you have that, since you have the tools, you can use configure to actually do the upload. And on top of the upload, so it'll just put it in the right place for you. And on top of that, you can also set the clock rate, because we have the RP2 there, all this SDK stuff, and it'll basically clock it at the right rate. So 5 things make this thing powerful compared to just using some random thing on the side. So everything we did to support ASICs is supported here. The dip switches, the 7 segments, all the PMODs, everything that works with TinyTapeout ASICs just works here. So that's pretty fun. That includes the microPython SDK. So everything that we did to get the TinyTapeout stuff working works here too. So that's also very nice. Now, this is one of the simplest FPGA boards I ever made. There's basically nothing on it but the FPGA. No onboard flash, no clocking, there's nothing. And that is not just to reduce the BOM cost. What it does is it makes the FPGA, it forces us to basically treat it in exactly the same way, which means that your experience is going to be the same when you pop it off and put the actual ASIC that you produced in its place. So that means one example is the ASICs are multi-project. Well, so is this one. You just use that same shuttle interface and say, well, this is the bitstream I want to load now, and it comes on just like when you're doing projects. on an ASIC, and you're choosing which project to load. It's a universal TT chip, so everything that's ever been done way back or just now waiting at the foundry, it's all online, it's all open source. You can just choose one, pick it, clone it, tweak it, and play. You can have any design running in minutes from the way past. This was way past, TT05. I got my thing running in like no time at all. You get full control and visibility. Now this breakout is the FPGA, but it's tied to the demo board, so all those pins are connected, and you can use the same APIs to play with the inputs, look at the outputs, script it, and observe stuff. So finally, the hardware in the loop testing. We've got cocotb test benches running with hardware in the loop on the MCU, and it just runs the same way. It discovers the test and it just shows you the results. You don't have to rewrite anything. If you had a test bench that was working in simulation, it's now working with the FPGA, and then in the future with the ASIC. So that was the elevator pitch in 10 seconds. Take a closer look to some interesting things. Now, the whole point of TinyTapeout, like I said, is to have multiple projects on one chip. Well, the FPGA is going to act the same way. You have that same shuttle interface. You can do tab, see what's there. Whatever you put in bit streams as a bin file is going to be available. And you just say enable, and it loads it up. And like I said, if you configured that clocking, it'll auto clock it to the same rate. But that's still up to you. You can clock it at whatever speed you want to do now. So because there's no clocking on the FPGA breakout, we're doing it through the RP2. You can set it at any time. Of course, yes, TinyTapeout's been producing batches and batches of ASICs. I don't even know how many we've made so far, but it gives us a whole library of projects to look at. So you can just go through this list from back in the day to now and see what the source is, see it. I took Flappy VGA, which was from before we had the gamepad PMods, and I just took it, I cloned it, and I added that stuff in, and then I could see just how terrible I actually was at playing this game. I've always been a better maker than a gamer. But yeah, it took me 10 minutes and I was just messing with someone else's project. Pretty sweet. It also means that if you didn't get your hands on one of the ASICs, yeah, okay, you have it right now. You just take this FPGA board, clone the thing, do those 3 commands. You have every single TinyTapeout chip available to you. So the source gets you a view of the internals from the outside. So you've played with the internals, now we're going to interact with it. This is where the RP2 that's connected to it through the demo board comes in. So what it gives you is an API. You have this TT object with everything available. The inputs are there. You can play with them like as a group, as a port. You can change each one, of course, individually, or you can use a Verilog-y way to basically configure them. So that's how it works with the cocotb test benches. It looks like Verilog stuff. So it all comes out. The other thing is you can script things. I use the REPL a lot to see how things are working and just play with it and figure out what to do. Then once you know, because you've tried it out in the REPL, you package it up in a Python script and there you go, pretty sweet. The cocotb test benches, right. So if you decided to try out cocotb, did a test bench for your system and have it running, well, it just works now. So there are some changes. Here are the changes. Import microcotb as cocotb. That's it. It just avoids you to doing a search and replace. Otherwise, this is the same test bench I used in Sim. So those decorators, cocotb test, that's it. It detects all that. It'll figure out which are the tests, and then it'll run them and do all the normal test things. Clock the system, set the inputs, check the outputs, assert if there's a problem, and then you just run it, and it basically acts as if it was on the desktop. It's a little bit slower, but it finds the tests. This is testing my SHA-256 encoder. It's going okay. Goes through all that. A little bit slow because you're clocking one at a time and it's through the RP2, but still, it'll report any error you find. It'll give you the same kind of report we have with cocotb, and that's it, except that it's proven with the FPGA, with everything done there. So once you're sure, you press that button, submit it, get the chip in a couple of months, and then just redo the same command. All right, it's proven, everything works. MicroCotb is what makes this possible. It's basically an implementation I did of cocotb, which runs on anything with Python, and you can see examples of it in the microPython SDK repo, but basically that's only there to show you, here's how you do the imports, and here's how you launch it. The rest is exactly the same. final thing would be the VGA Playground. The VGA Playground is pretty cool. It basically lets you do VGA stuff live in your browser. So you make changes here and it just updates what's happening and you can see it here. So this is all simulation, but we also have a way to just one button harden and then get that bin and then you pop it onto it and there it is in real life as well. So that's really fun if you want to do something graphic related. So that's pretty much it. We sold out of the first batch, but we have another batch brewing now. You can get it at the store. There, if you actually use the Latch Up 10, you get 10% off. But this is all open, right? So you can buy it and just get it, or you can make one. Hooray! Pretty sweet. And yeah, for more information, you want to check the guide that is on the TinyTapeout website under guides, and that'll just give more detailed instructions of install these things and do these things, but you know, 3 commands. Thank you to the FOSSi Foundation, TinyTapeout, and the University of Waterloo. That's my whole presentation. Boom, boom. If there are any questions, I'm here.
So I'm still digesting the presentation. It went very quick. Lots of stuff.
His explanation faster than HIS.
Hey, thanks for this. Can you describe how your hardware in loop testing is working with respect to the CocoDB scheduler, and also if there are any wrinkles around dealing with not being able to control time?
Oh, well, the thing is, with microcotb, you're going to say either clock, X number of times, or you're going to say wait for the falling edge of this, right? Well, everything is slowed down, but for the chip, everything is happening in clock cycles, right? So I rewrote this whole thing because there is no scheduler. It's just, oh, you are clocking once, here we go, we did that. Oh, you're waiting for a falling edge? Well, I'm clocking until this happens, stuff like that. So it's online, you can check it out, but basically it's very manual style because I couldn't rely on anything too fancy in the Python world. I just made it so that all the API would be the same, but under the hood, it's all just things I made.
Thank you. This might be more of a random question, but I remember with the actual PCB design for the TinyTapeout, at least the one last year, there was, I guess from where the PCB was built, especially with the amount of pins that was required, there was a noticeable low pass filtering effect that you have to take into account when you're actually building an ASIC, especially with higher frequencies. And I was wondering how different that is from the actual effects you see on pins with this FPGA chip.
Okay. So you're talking about LP filtering inside the ASIC versus the
like in the pins, from actual breakout port pins, the actual chip.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So the breakout, actually, the version I just did is simplified in a couple of ways. First of all, we used to have these utility PMODs plus the input-output BIDIR, and that was a lot of wires for just somebody's going to use it maybe. So instead now we have an interposer. If you want to use that same set, you can just put an interposer, but no one else is disturbed. The path is much clearer and it's nicer. The other thing is we switched out the 100 mil headers, which were getting kind of big and hard to come off, and weren't that great in terms of SI. We replaced those with some high rows, high speed, wonderful things. So now we have more space for all the analog stuff. Just comes up down to the board and goes out. And we have space for 22 or something like that now. Although not all chips will support that many analogs. And the digital stuff is relatively clean. It's not the cleanest because you're going both to the RP2 and to the PMODs. And that includes even the clocking, So it's not the best, but if you really, really care about that, well, this is why the ASICs are split off of the demo board. You're not stuck with all the choices I made. You just pop it off, use those high rows connectors, and do a nice job.
Thank you so much.
And I suggest we thank the speaker again.